Yeah. Just a big bitch. Hi everyone, we're just about to start recording. Today obviously we're doing the E-Myth Revisited. I think we're actually ready to go this week, which makes a change.
Okay, let's do it.
If you've got any comments, please feel free to write them. I'm speaking as though there's somebody there. There's nobody in there yet.
Hello and welcome to the 5%ers. I'm Nathan Alibaba. I'm joined as ever by Daniela Genus.
That's my name.
Say hello.
Hi.
Every week we discuss an inspiring book that we're reading that advances us towards our goal of becoming a 5%er. This week Daniela and I are reviewing The E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber's book. If you've ever wondered why so many small businesses fail, or why some small businesses start in a garage and end up becoming Amazon, or other businesses struggle for the rest of their lives, or indeed end up becoming McDonald's, which is one of the examples that we'll share later on in the book, the best small business in the world. The book answers that question. So the book dispels a lot of the myths about starting your own business. Common assumptions, expectations, and even technical expertise can get in the way of running a business. This book is about how to grow a business from infancy through to adolescence, all the way through to maturity, and actually franchising your business, but not in the franchise model that you typically think of a franchise, in a more kind of nuanced way, which we'll get into in a lot of detail. So, Daniela, let's put it over to you. What were your thoughts of the book? What do you think?
I would call this a life changer.
Wow.
There were so many things within the book that I could relate to directly from running my business, and the key person, well, the start of the book, he provides all the kind of advice, but he uses a business owner called Sarah as, I guess, the example throughout the book, and he's talking to Sarah, and Sarah is me. Wow. And there's so many things that Sarah did wrong that I did wrong, so it was quite emotional for me to read the book, actually.
Okay.
But it was a fantastic book, and I guess the key theme of the book is I guess this idea of people thinking that you go into business and you're an entrepreneur, but actually it's not necessarily just about calling yourself an entrepreneur. It's about, are you actually looking at your business as a product, which is what a true entrepreneur does, or are you a technician looking at the product being delivered to the customer and focusing on that? And I think that's probably the key. Well, that's what he's saying. What the myth is. The myth is that if you're and it's on page.
That's what I was going to ask. What is the E-Myth? What does it actually mean?
So it's, I guess, this idea of what it's not is. He says, for example, the technician is somebody that starts a business with this focus on, that has an entrepreneurial seizure, and a business, not a business but a place to go to work. So the carpenter or the electrician or the plumber becomes a contractor, the barber opens up a barber shop, the technical writer starts a technical writing business, the hairdresser starts a beauty salon. And I know loads of people that have, it's this thing, we're working in a job and I've got this skill, so I'm going to go and start
go and do it.
But actually that's not, you're not supposed to be working in your business, you're supposed to be working on your business. And it's about making the business a product as opposed to making your business about the product or the service. And that's the myth, I guess.
That's the thing. And there's the bit in this that relates specifically to me as well, because and so many entrepreneurs, in that they're doing technical work employed by somebody else, and they look at it and they're like, bloody, I can do this, like this is so easy. Like,
I did think of you but I didn't want to.
No, I mean, say it. It's humbling to know that, look, other people have been in a very similar position, and the mistakes that I've made aren't just unique to me, like other people have made it as well. So he goes on to say that the typical business owner or entrepreneur thinks, because I've been doing this technical work for someone else, I can do it for myself. This person who's employing me doesn't know as much as I do. Let me just do this thing for myself. As you said, the mechanic becomes and the school teacher or the whatever baker goes into baking cakes, and then one day, for no apparent reason, something happened that might have been the weather, a birthday of your child, just a graduation or high school. It might have been a paycheck they received on a Friday afternoon, or a sideways glance from your boss just after that just didn't sit right with you. And it might have been a feeling that your boss didn't really appreciate your contribution to the success of his business. It could have been anything. It doesn't really matter what it was. But one day, for apparently no reason, you were suddenly stricken with the entrepreneurial seizure. And from that day on, your life would never be the same again. And I've written lol, wow in the side there, because that like specifically sort of relates to me. So it's just a whole idea of like, you think that you can start a business because you're good at a technical skill, but that's not really what makes entrepreneurs. So what does make an entrepreneur, or what does make a good business person?
Well, it's this person that's looking at the business as a product in itself, as opposed to the individual products that the business sells.
So what does that mean?
So, for example, he uses an example of McDonald's. I can't remember the name of the guy that saw.
Ray Kroc.
Yeah, he saw two guys with this systemized process of selling hamburgers, and instead of him, I guess, starting his own hamburger firm, what he did is looked at what they were doing in terms of the system and replicated it, and then sold that system. And actually, what was the strength of the burger company wasn't the burgers, it was the system. And it's this idea that people buy how something is done, not necessarily always what it is. Which for me, I don't want to use Oprah's term, but it was a light bulb moment. And I was like, it's true. And it's something that I probably say, but without necessarily even appreciating what I'm saying. So when I've been discussing business ideas with people, and they've said, oh yeah, but somebody already does it, and I'm like, but I would do it this way. Like this. And actually, it's really just articulating that in a much better fashion. Because it's true, McDonald's is not the best food in the world, but it's the process.
You know what you get every single time. It's that repeatability that people want. He says that, you know, in the world that we're in, it's very unpredictable, and it's very much like one day could be completely different to the next. People want certainty, and if you can give them that kind of predictability, they'll pay you for that, right? He gives the example of when he went into a barber's. Remember that one? So he goes into a barber's to get a haircut. The first time he goes in, he gets a cup of tea. The guy gives him extra special treatment, washes his face, and treats him really nice. And he's like, oh, this place is really...
And his assistant gives him a coffee and then asks him if he wants a top up of the coffee.
Right, exactly. So he thought, this is brilliant. I'm going to come back here more and more. The second time he came, completely different experience.
Yeah, he didn't get the wash. I think he was offered coffee, but only once.
Right.
And I think before he said that there was a combination of using the shaver and the razor. This time it was just the shaver and no scissors. So yeah, it was different each time.
Right. So that's what made him think that really you don't really care about me, because there's no system and procedure in place here that is predictable, that I can feel comfortable with. That's what people want. So if you can create that system and then franchise that model, so that you can take yourself out of the business, that's the way to kind of generate, you know, this predictable success. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, so because we think it was actually quite a good book. Okay, so you said that it related to you when you were running your last business, Aspire for You. In what way specifically?
Well, the technician aspect, first and foremostly. I was very good at organising events, and I said, well, let me just start an event company. And instead of, I guess, working on growing and this is not me consistently, initially, it wasn't necessarily about me running a business, it was about me organising events. And as the business continued, I then started to try and be strategic. Okay, how can we grow? And then once we started to grow, then I went back to doing the events. And pretty much throughout, I led on all of the events within the organisation. Had I been being strategic, what I would have done is took a step back and said, how do I create a system that means I can send other people to organise these events to the same level that I can. And that was what really resonated with me. And to be honest, in thinking of new business ideas now for me to move forward with, I have stopped doing that. Like, it's not about, okay, I can do events, so I should set up an events business. It's looking at what can I do that I would be able to manage and grow without me being in it, because I don't want to be in a business at this point.
Work on the business, not in the business.
Right? And I think that he makes that very clear, and especially with the example of this Sarah, and he's saying that she could bake pies, so she decided to set up a pie company, but actually she's working 10 times harder than she would if she just went and worked in a pie shop.
So let's just recap for everyone that hasn't read the book. So the story is told through the eyes of Sarah. So he goes into this bakery. Sarah owns the bakery. And she's struggling to grow her business, right? Mm-hmm. She's tired, she's exasperated, and he goes in to advise her on the best ways to change and grow. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about, like, you know, the transition, like where she started and the kind of revelations that she uncovered over the period of time that he was with her to actually make her understand what he was trying to make her understand.
Well, it's kind of what we've been discussing. So this idea that she's a technician, so she's baking the pies, and while she's baking the pies, she's therefore not doing the manager and the entrepreneur stuff, because he breaks it down into, I guess, 3 different personalities. So the entrepreneur personality, the manager personality, and the technician personality. And he says, really, for a successful business, you need a combination of all three. However, most business owners just stick in the technician, and sometimes they might branch out into the manager, but even going into the manager area is not good enough. And so she came to that realization that actually that's what she's been doing. And there's so many different areas that he looks at. So for example, he's talking about in one section that you have to be systematic and create processes, etc. And she kind of said, yeah, but that makes it boring, and does anybody want to, like, she doesn't want her staff members to feel that they're just being robots. And then he uses an example of, well, the reason you wanted to do pies is because I think it was her mum or her grandmother, taught her how to make pies. And he was saying, well, did she not teach you to cut the pastry in a certain way? Did she not teach you to do this in a certain way? But you still enjoyed it. That's still having a process. And actually, without the process, you can't improve on anything. So you have to have some form of system in place that's written out and that people adhere to, or how do you improve on it?
True.
And that's a good point.
True, it's a good point. The only thing that I'm thinking, though, is that some people don't want to have a business the size of a McDonald's or an Amazon. Some people are just happy to have a small, family-run, small thing. Why do I need to grow it so huge to be sold? I don't want it to be.
That's fine, but it doesn't have to be so huge to be sold. But if you
that's what he's saying.
But I think
he's saying every business has to be grown to a point where it has to be sold. Like, that's the point of it.
I didn't take that way. I haven't got to the last page yet, so maybe.
You haven't read the whole book?
No, I haven't got to the last page yet.
How can you do a book review when you haven't read the book?
Because I've read enough of the book that I can do a book review, but I haven't gone to the last page. What I felt was that it doesn't even matter if you don't want to have a huge company. If you want to have a company that you are not a slave to, you still need to put these things into perspective. Even if you want to have a small family-run business, he says in the book somewhere, I can't remember what page, what happens if you're sick? What happens if you want to be sick? What happens if you want to be sick? Yeah, what happens if you just want to be lazy?
True.
What happens if you want to go on holiday? If you are integral to the business and the business is you,
then the business stops.
When you stop.
Right.
And that, even a small family-run business, that's impractical.
True.
So I think it's more than growing your business to a place where you can sell it. It's about making the business operate without you at the centre, because whilst you're at the centre, you don't have any life.
Okay.
And this Sarah didn't have a life. She said she would get there from 3 a.m. baking pies and preparing pastry. Then she wouldn't leave till the dead of night.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a life.
It's not a life.
You may as well go and get a job.
Yeah.
You'd live much better.
Right.
And then she said she's doing all that, but she's still struggling to pay the bills, and she doesn't know how she's going to cover her costs the next month. What's the point of that? It's pointless.
Okay, true. Okay, it seems as though we've abandoned the structure that we normally have of this, right? Where we do 3 points each. However, it's a useful discussion. but what I wanted to ask you specifically was this idea that he has around create a vision and a plan for the business that you want when it's finished. So, so he says the plan will change, but you'll always have a vision for the future in mind. So he gets Sarah to realize or to forecast in 10 years time, what do you want this business to look like? And it forces her out of her technician mindset to actually create this kind of vision, right? How important do you think that is, number one? And have you done that for your own business? Did you do that for Aspire for you? And have you done that now?
See, that wasn't one of the biggest bits that I got out of the book, because I did do that.
Okay.
But it didn't. It did inform some of the decisions that I made, but I think that without having some of the other things that we've learned from this book, and even in some of the other books and just in life in general, having a vision is pointless if you're not going to stick to it and if you're not going to bring all the other pieces together. Because I had a very clear vision, and to the point that it used to be funny because I would say it and people would be like, I want to have this international social enterprise with offices in Birmingham, Nottingham, Leeds,
so
Manchester,
you saw it.
London, Lagos, Kingston.
Wow,
we're going to work with, like I was very specific, and we would organise events and use the funding to train disadvantaged young people who would then put on the events and blah blah blah. I was very clear. I would just be that person that goes to the office every so often and this is great.
Keep going.
So I had the vision, but because I didn't have all of the other bits in position, the vision didn't necessarily come to fruition, and I did sell the business, so I guess I did achieve some part of it, but when I sold the business it still wasn't at the point that I wanted it to be, at the point that I would have considered selling it if I ever would have considered selling.
Good point. But he does say that it's still important to have that vision from the get-go, because he says a mature company starts that way, as opposed to kind of trying to figure out along the way how to create this system later on down the line when there are other people in. It's much harder to do that.
I agree, and I think everybody should start at that point, but I think that in the overall scheme of things, I don't necessarily know if he stressed the importance of I don't know, that not being number one priority, because it is a priority and you have to do it, but don't get too caught up on that because I've set this vision it's going to be successful. No, because you still need to do X, Y and Z.
Right. Okay, we've touched on this a little bit, but talk to me about this whole idea of systems dependent people systems dependent, not people dependent.
Well, it's this idea that if you create a set of systems and a manual on how to run the business, then if you are taken out of the business, or if anybody's taken out of the business, or if anyone put into the business that's not necessarily the best in their field, the business will still run and still have a certain standard. So again, he uses the McDonald's example and this Hamburger University, and that whole point of training people in the system of McDonald's. Therefore, you can sell 100 McDonald's, you can go to 100 McDonald's across the world, and you still can expect to receive the same thing. And there might be slight variations, but for the most part, it's the same.
It's the same.
So it's about making sure that you build a business that is system dependent, not people dependent. Because at the point that becomes people dependent, even if that person is not you, what happens if you can't find... So he says, if you're going to have an accountancy firm, for example, you can't always get the best accountant. So make sure you have the...
They'll be expensive.
So have the best systems so that you can bring in any accountant, and the job
and
still
they
gets
slot
done.
into the system, right? Then you're paying slightly cheaper wages, and they're growing up and learning the way that you want things to be done, instead of taking other ideas from previous employers and then bringing them into your system that doesn't necessarily work, right? Which I think is a great idea, because so many times you bring in experts from different businesses, assuming that they've got this prior knowledge. And they do, they're very skilled at what they do, but they bring in their own preconceptions and their own ideas and their own systems and ways of doing things, and it kind of just messes up.
It might not be congruent to how you want your business to be, or this overall vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. So, were there any other specific areas that, I know we had these 3 points.
Well, we kind of looked at the 3 points. So we looked at the technician, the systems dependent, the entrepreneurial seizure we looked at, but also this idea of abdication of responsibility, so management by abdication. And he talked about what happens when you're running this business and you're in the early stage. Is it the infancy stage you call it?
Infancy.
Infancy, and you're doing everything, and then you go into the adolescent phase, and then you realise you need to take on help. And then what happens is you take on a member of staff, and then you abdicate all responsibilities to them. So in the book, Sarah, he actually is using an example of somebody else, but who hires somebody called Harry, and he goes through explaining how this person put everything on Harry, and just every time Harry came back and said, I need some help, Harry, you just sort it out, and blah blah blah. And then Harry started hiring people, and then before he knew it, this person knew it, he started to receive complaints because things had not been done to the standard that he would have normally had, but that's because you left everything to Harry. And then Sarah, who he's telling this story to, is like, oh, I had a Harry, her name was Elizabeth. And then me that was reading the story, I'm like, oh, I had 2 of those.
you had 2 Elizabeths?
I did that twice. And it is that kind of thing that once you get somebody there that you feel that can do the stuff that you don't like to, okay, you go and do it.
You just do it.
You do it.
I don't have to worry about it. I have to think about it.
And I did it twice, and the first time I did it, the person just didn't do anything. So we was leading up to an event. the event happened, and the event in terms of attendance was the worst, and I'd been doing this event consistently for years, the worst attendance ever. We didn't get half of the sponsorship financially that we normally would get, and that's because I put all of that stuff onto her, because
she doesn't care. Does she?
She said
to what extent? Yeah, exactly. But to what extent does she? Does she care as much as you?
Well, no. And then in the second, so I got rid of that person. Then I hired another one, and that person also didn't. The event was okay, but again, attendance was low. There was even worse sponsorship than the previous person, and then that person left to set, like, literally at a very pivotal point, just vanished. And it's funny.
What's the name of the person? Do you want to have them on air? No, it's okay, don't do that.
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
That's
do
probably
that
not a very good idea.
But yeah, and Sarah says her Elizabeth, she put everything into her, and she trusted her, and she felt they were friends. And then one day she could just called up and said, "Actually, I quit. I've got another job somewhere else." Yeah. And she was so hurt. And it was the same thing that happened to me. And I was like, "What? What do you mean? But you said that you was really passionate about this and da da da." And they all say that. You're joking
me. So like literally almost word for word.
Exact same thing. I was about to get married. Like I was getting married in a week, and the person said, "I'm quitting. Like I've got a once in a lifetime business opportunity. I've quit." So reading it, I was like, this is so weird. But it's true. Had there been proper systems and procedures in place, neither one of those situations would have occurred.
Yeah.
So I think, even though he doesn't explicitly say it, in addition to systems, I think your recruitment processes are key.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, because it's all well and good having systems in place, but if you bring in people that are not going to implement systems, it's also a waste of time.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else specifically that stands out to you?
Just, I guess, this idea of this business franchise model.
Yeah.
That really.
That's the thing for me. And then taking that one step further.
Yeah, but we haven't said what it is.
Okay, go on.
I forgot. No, it's the business franchise. So you know the traditional franchise model. So you have a McDonald's or you have a Subway. You buy into the franchise, you get the handbook, and you know what to do.
Right.
So the business franchise model is you don't necessarily have to actually franchise the business.
Yes.
But set your business up in a way that it could be franchised.
Yes.
So that when you decide you want to take a step back, somebody else can slot in.
Definitely.
So in terms of me thinking of business ideas now, it's completely changed.
Right.
Because my idea of what the next business that I want to do has always been something that I don't necessarily have to be integral to, but I didn't necessarily know how that would work. And actually using this business franchise model of building a business through process can allow me to, I guess regardless of whichever business that I set up, but can enable me to do that.
But it's definitely about how you start it and creating the organizational structure
around
the system. So just talking about that, how that works. So I mean, this is something that I'm doing with your husband actually at the moment. So creating a structure of what the business will look like when it's finished, and then mapping out all of the roles and responsibilities that are needed to fulfill all of those roles, right? So you have, an MD, you'll have someone responsible for sales, someone responsible for marketing, someone responsible for operations, finance, HR, all of the roles that you need in order for the business to run. And then under those individuals, who else reports into them? So you'll have maybe, a marketing person or a finance executive or what have you. So map out all of those individuals all the way down to the bottom. And because that then, makes probably 20 different roles. Obviously you don't have 20 employees. There's only 2 of you right now, or like 1 of you, or how many people are starting the business. So then you need to put your name next to all of the different roles, and then you start working in your business. But then when you're working in the business, you document everything that needs to be done in that particular role,
how you do it,
and how it needs to be done, and who that person reports to, what their roles and responsibility is, so that when you hire the person in and say, here is the manual, this is how you do it, I want you to do it like this. And then you go to the next rung, then hire someone in at that level, and then you go to the next rung. So you're slowly taking yourself out of the business and becoming a shareholder. And that's how you then franchise that and take that wherever you want to go. I thought that was such a simple but well articulated way of like presenting a business, right? Lovely. It's just changed my whole perspective. So a lot of value in it. Okay, just before we run into the critiques, anything that you want to say, anything else that you want to sort of talk about within the book?
No, I think that's pretty
much it. Okay. Obviously a lot of good things to say about it. What negatives do you have?
I don't really have if I'm honest, it's not repetitive, which is usually my critique. I hate repetition. I don't really think it's particularly repetitive. It's well written.
Yeah.
I love the way that he continually refers back to Sarah. Like at first it kind of annoyed me because I'm like, who is Sarah?
Who is Sarah? Why do I care about this?
But then I realised it was just the narrative that
right.
I can't even speak, that continued throughout
the story, right?
And having that, well, I guess the fact that I was able to personally relate to Sarah by the time I got halfway through, that made, if you're not able to relate to her, maybe you might have a different opinion. But for me, that strengthened the ideas, because you're not just giving ideas and giving random examples. It's the same person throughout. Yeah. And going, and him explaining how she had a light bulb moment, or she's like, oh no, I don't think that's going to work, or you know, and that's kind of what you would do. Yeah. So I was going through that process.
You were like, nah, that wouldn't work.
With
like,
her.
That doesn't
not even
know
it wouldn't work, but I remember thinking no, it wouldn't work. Okay. I remember when somebody told me to write a handbook for my business, and I was like, that's just going to take forever. And instead of me doing it, again, I abdicated responsibility to my staff to do it. But so while she's going through that, I remember going through that and thinking similar, and saying to Sarah, actually no, Sarah, you need it and you need to get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved how he did that, and then he does give other additional examples, but
yeah,
it was very written. I love the sections that he broke everything down into. I loved this kind of idea of relating a business to infancy, adolescence, maturity, because I always used to call my business my baby, for example.
Okay.
Because really, it's that same kind of thing. You have an idea. Yeah. I'm not gonna completely compare it, but it grows. Right. You birth it. Okay. It grows, and and there's different stages. So, and I loved the way he explained that. So I think it was a really good book to be honest.
Yeah. And just from the point of view of how much more confidence does it give you now?
It's not even that it's giving me confidence. It's giving me like, I don't know how to say it to make it not sound negative, but it's made me like, it's got me on this frenzy to think of, okay, which of the business ideas that I have can be systemized the best, the quickest for me to be able to achieve what he's. So it's excited. It's excited.
Yeah, it's excited. Yeah. It's also made me think how much I don't know, because for so many years, like I've always had business ideas and always wanted to be entrepreneurial, and I've had lots of energy, but it's just been misdirected, you know, for such a long period of time. And I thought I knew what I needed to do at the time, and I had no clue. Now that I know what it takes to actually run a successful business, like I had no clue. So it's making me think, like, what else don't I know? You know, it's making me really humble.
See, I didn't have that. I had this idea of, oh my gosh, now I know everything. I need to do something. No,
but we don't. We still don't.
No, like, I know I don't, but I feel like I know enough now.
You know more than what you did before.
Yeah, but I guess also with the books that we've read, so this one, Selling the Invisible, we've also read, The Fast Lane Millionaire, The Compound Effect. Brilliant. We've read more than that, but those 4 books in particular, including this one, plus my experience of actually running a business, plus the fact that I'm now doing an MBA, all of those things combined, I feel like if I can just work out which business I'm going to start, I can't see that it's not going to be a success at this point. Okay. It's like, you took the humble approach, I took the overly confident approach, as I always do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely made me confident, but it's also made me think, bloody hell, like, there's a lot more to learn, and there's a lot more to know, and I need to humble myself.
There's always more to learn, but I feel like we've learned a substantial amount.
Yeah, and I don't disagree.
I guess for me, I think I've learned the missing parts.
Okay.
I think that's the difference.
Okay.
So whilst I know that there's more to learn,
but aren't there more missing parts that you don't even know? We don't even know what we don't know.
No, I know. I know I don't know what I don't know. But I know what I needed to know to change my situation.
Okay.
So I'm sure that there's more things that... Yeah. So for example, if my business before was a 4 out of 10 in terms of success, I knew that I needed to know X, Y, and Z to get it to at least a 7 or an 8. And a 7 or an 8, for me, it's not good enough, but it would work now.
Yes.
Then the stuff that I don't know I know is probably the 8, 9, and 10. Okay. But that can come. But that for now,
you're in a good place.
I know enough. Okay. I think I could get to at least a 7.5.
All right. Cool. All right. So no critiques then, basically.
I don't know. I feel like you should always critique, but
I can't find it. I can't find anything. I can't find much. It could be longer. You know, you could add like another section, but that's it. Rating.
A 10.
10. Is that your first 10?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I just think it gives you everything that you need to know. Like some of the other books, they got some really, like, I loved this concept but you're not really telling me exactly how to do it. This is quite clear on how to do it. Like, you can read this book and go and do it. Whereas like the Fast Lane Millionaire,